All right, hello and good morning. I have the pleasure today of being able to interview Holly Jennings and Phil Ammons. Holly is from Charlotte, North Carolina. Phil is from Raleigh, North Carolina. And both individuals came over from corporate America, from the banking industry. I'll allow them to take a few minutes here as we get started. I'd love to hear their stories and their backgrounds. My name is Brett Grossman. I'm the top leader here with Freedom Financial Solutions, and these are my counterparts in Freedom Financial Solutions. We work together through the agency, through Mike Schless and Colleen Covington. And today's topic, what I'd like to do is I'd like to put them both in the spotlight. I'd like to find out a little bit about what they're doing on a daily basis, a weekly basis, how they're approaching business owners, what the process looks like. Philip is having a tremendous amount of success as he gets his career started here in this end of the financial services industry. And Holly as well has had a lot of success meeting with business owners and being able to take care of her clients. And so let's go ahead, let's get the party started. And so ladies first, I'd like to start with Holly. Thank you for being here.
Yes, absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here, Brett, and love interacting with your team on the Facebook page. It's an awesome group you've got.
Awesome. I appreciate that. You're a great asset to the company. And, we look forward to hearing what it is that you're going to give us here today in terms of some information. But first, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get started in financial services and what brought you to this point now?
Yeah, of course. I went to the University of Central Florida, which is in Orlando, as a psychology major, which has always come in handy for me in sales. I started in the customer service world and health insurance benefits administration. So that's where I kind of started to interact with benefits. And then I went into the financial services industry in Charlotte with a major bank here in the Carolinas. And it was a great experience. I learned a ton. It definitely helped me learn how to talk to people very candidly about their finances, which is, that takes a little bit of fear to overcome. And it was a great career there, but I just felt like I was very limited in what I was able to help people with. The greatest part about working for Freedom Financial is you get to take your collective experiences from the past and use them with all these different tools and ways to help people that, a big corporation is just limited in what they're able to do. So I was just, when I heard about Mike's passion and his mission statement, I knew it was for me. So I'm loving it ever since.
Very awesome. So at some point in time, you just got sick and tired of the daily grind and you felt like you were capped at where you currently were in corporate America. And what triggered that? What made you say, hey, listen, I'm going to change this for myself. It's time.
Yeah, you nailed it, Brett. It's living in a world of cap potential. I was in the top 1% of the franchise for 4 years, quarter over quarter. And it's a what have you done for me lately mentality. It's just the grind was unbelievable. I hadn't taken a vacation in 4 years. It was just working so hard to make someone else's dreams come true. And insult to injury, not even being able to really help people the way I wanted to. So it just enough was enough.
Got it. And I think a lot of us who come on board with Freedom Financial Solutions, that resonates with us because we're looking, for some folks, it's a plan B. For others like myself, it's a plan A. There is no other plan B. And it's because of situations like that. And I'm going to come back to you here in a minute. Go down here to Phil Ammons. Phil, again, thank you for being here with us. You're brand new to Freedom Financial Solutions, but you've had a tremendous amount of success as you've onboarded here, meeting with business owners. Before we get into it, same thing. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your business background, and what brought you here to our opportunity.
I'm originally from actually the Charlotte area. I actually went to college for psychology, just like Holly at Gardner-Webb. During my college years, I was working retail. Anybody who's ever worked retail knows that comes along with learning to talk to people. When you get that skill down, you're kind of like already on the path. During that time, I actually wound up working for a large bank in North Carolina. which started picking up the rest of my financial skills. Once you have the skill set of being able to talk to people, now you have to start uncovering needs, understanding what their life looks like, put yourself in their shoes. So I basically built that skill set. Then I got switched to the small business side of things, which is a whole completely different understanding of what an actual business owner goes through on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, and even on a monthly basis. And then a yearly basis as well, because they've got so many moving parts of what's going on, what they're trying to manage. There's a lot of different stuff. But just like Holly, I felt boxed in. There was only so much I could do to help a client, a customer, help their families, stuff like that. So with that frustration growing, it really was time to move away and do something else to where I could actually make the financial lives of my clients much better.
Awesome. And so same thing, something clicked in you through that daily grind that allowed you to finally make a decision for yourself and say, hey, I'm looking to do something bigger and better, not just for myself, but for my clients.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Okay, awesome. So let's kind of get into it, because you both kind of, you play a similar role. You're meeting with business owners on a daily basis. Holly, I'll start with you. Give us an idea. What does a day in the life look like? How do you plan your day and start your day around, right? As an independent business woman, how do you plan that? What does that look like on your calendar? How are you getting in touch with business owners? And right, so it's Sunday evening, let's say 8 o'clock at night. What does Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday look like for you?
Yeah, I think there's what I call in this world short plays and long plays, right? So your short plays are, you want to get, I would say at a minimum 5 appointments a week. So there's a hustle aspect to that, right? So the way that you can, get those appointments is by calling on businesses. One thing that I also do is I force myself to shop small and eat small. So if I'm, going to go out to eat, I love to go to a small business where I know I'm going to run into the owner versus maybe going to Chili's or a bigger place, right? So it's it's an obsessive networking desire, I guess, is kind of that component. And I would say like your long play is finding what Philip and I talk about, which is centers of influence. So what we try to go do is talk to accountants, people in insurance that are maybe doing personal and casualty, but not writing life, or talking about cash accumulation. So that's kind of our mentality, is how much time do we spend on the short plays? And that's usually just a number you're trying to get to in your week, like let's say a 5 appointment goal. And then also spending time on your longer plays, so you're eliminating the amount of hustle work you have to do every week just to get your next week booked up.
Love that. I love what you said in regards to having lunches and breakfast and things of that nature in small business owners, because they get to see your face, you get to meet them. It's more personable.
Yeah, and you're supporting them, and that they're more inclined to hear you, right? So it's kind of like what Mike Schless does when he goes into any business and he says, and he asks what they do, and in turn when they ask you what you do, that's where you have your 2 questions that you ask, right? Well, let me first ask you a question. What would you do if what would happen to your business if you couldn't come to work for a few weeks or even a month? What would that look like for you? So it's just putting yourself in a position to always be talking to people. Philip told me an amazing story yesterday in engaging his lawn guy about an IUL, and he's already got him committed to $3,600 a year. So that's just that mentality you have to have, which is so impressive about Philip as well.
Well, let's segue that back over to Phil. Phil, tell us a little bit about, how did you get the landscaper to engage in that conversation? How did that look for you?
The thing about, like what I was saying before, is like a building, or like being able to talk to people. We actually we're talking about football. We're both big Dallas Cowboy fans. So okay, well, we'll just stop the interview right now. But
You know, from Philadelphia, right?
Oh, that's the reason why I got that in there.
You know who won the Super Bowl this year, correct?
Yep, I do.
Okay, just wanted to make sure everybody was clear, and anybody who's going to watch the replay, just to give a quick reminder who won. Okay, but go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
But anyway, so you just kind of have that conversation, and then it came to a lot of different things where he was telling me at one point, because I remember like a couple years ago he had broke his legs, like was pressure washing a house, fell off a ladder or something like that, and just kind of talking to him about pieces of his life. I know that he has he fosters children. He was talking about his medical bills, how he's trying to repair his credit, how he would like to expand his business. Every single bit of that is just clues telling me that, hey, there's something here that he needs help with. And so just, get in talking. I'm like, well, what do you have? What are you doing? What pieces are in place? What does your credit look like? What does your retirement look like? What does your medical insurance look like? What would happen if this happened? What would happen if this happened? And it's the easiest conversation, because most of the small business owners, they already know that they're not taking care of themselves. They're all, what I say, they're all out trying to play Superman. They all think that they can work every single day, and they're just hoping that retirement is in the cards for them. Otherwise, they're going to work till they're 70, 80 years old, and then just let the cards fall where they may.
Yep. And would you agree as well? We see it time and time again. Individuals in their late 60s, early 70s, sometimes into their 80s. A lot of times they're working because they need to stay busy, which I can appreciate. But sometimes they're working because they have to, because what was supposed to be their nest egg, their golden years, completely was decimated in 2008, and then they wound up having to work an extra 7 to 8 years at their full-time job, and it still wasn't enough, so then they had to pick up something part-time.
Oh, definitely happens.
Were you able to engage the landscaper? Were you able to engage him in a conversation with critical injury and how those benefits, if he had them in place prior, what that would have looked like, and what was his response?
Pretty much his response was, next week when I cut your grass, we're going to sit down and talk.
Got it.
The fact that he doesn't carry any kind of medical insurance makes the living benefits that we offer just a win-win on top of what they're already doing. So. Yep.
Not to jump too far ahead, but for instance, Holly, when you've been able to present an illustration to a potential client and you click the reports button in the illustration tab, and it shows the pie chart and it gives them the breakdown of their insurance face amount, and then it also shows them their premium amount, and then that pie chart that shows critical illness, critical injury, chronic illness, and terminal illness. For instance, that chronic illness benefit at age 65, somebody starts a plan in their 40s. How do you explain when they see that? What's that look like for you in terms of explaining chronic illness and critical illness?
Yeah, I think we're at a prime time to kind of offer these living benefits in regards to just the status of healthcare in this country. Just the mere fact that 62% of bankruptcies are medically related is pretty tragic. Especially knowing 80% of those people had medical insurance. It wasn't about not being properly covered. The problem is they just didn't have enough coverage. It's kind of like when you're at the car dealership and they try to sell you gap insurance. Sadly, the way that healthcare is now, we kind of need gap insurance because short-term and long-term disability, when you really break it down, is not adequate. If you could live off 60% of your salary for 2 years, you'd probably be doing an easier job. Or you have a lot of savings, which let's face it, we know most Americans don't. So I think the best way to talk through that aspect of the illustration is to let the customer answer their own questions, like Philip said, with the lawn care guy, in his mind, yeah, he knew about the incident where he fell off a ladder and what that would have done, but make them answer those questions, right? So, and not to kind of deter from your question here, Brett, and that's where what Czar says and what Philip and I really live by is that discovery period of the appointment where you already really know what they have and what they say each bucket is for. So what you're just essentially showing them is, here are all your buckets, here's what you have. We lay this policy on top of everything, and here's what gaps it covers and how it protects you. So once you know the overall picture, if you show them where it protects the components that they've described are important to them, like their retirement funds, savings for college, it really makes it more of a need than a sales pitch, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. Meaning, and you had brought it up, they're answering their own, they're telling you why they need to fill these voids, what their holes in their bucket look like. Exactly.
Yep. You're bringing them to the point, but not telling them what it is.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, that's great. And then Philip, I'll bring it back to you. Give me an idea. If you had right now, as you're putting together your business, and I'm sure you're making tweaks to it every day, and the more presentations you do, the more you're learning. But do you have a sale, I don't want to say a sales process, but do you have like a step process that's maybe, here's what I do step 1, here's step 2, and here's step 3 in terms of getting in touch with the business? Or Holly earlier had talked about scheduling out your day, 5 appointments a week. What does your step-by-step process look like in terms of from the time you walk into a business to almost to the point where you're delivering the policy? What is that process? What does it look like for you?
Well, just kind of give you a normal example. I mean, like I think in most conversations, nobody jumps straight into sales. I don't think anybody really wants that, and that's a way that you can come off and just make yourself seem like a salesperson. If that's all it, you build rapport, you take the things that you know about somebody, and you just, you learn, you talk to them. I mean, they're people, they have desires, they have dreams, they have things that they're interested in. And a lot of times you'll discover that through what type of business they do, what they're wearing, what they've got in their house, what they've got in their business, what they've got in their office. You just talk to them. And then, once that conversation is flowing, and you've got a good pace, and, you're kind of feeling, well, let's talk a little bit about, what you do, to try to find, get them talking about their finances, how they make money, where their faults lie, what we call in the business side of things, pain points.
Yep.
For most business owners, that looks like, it's usually going to be some sort of cash flow issue. They're going to have a gap somewhere, and they're not going to have that fit. They've got no answer for it. It could be lending against taking out a bank loan or something like that. Their problems could be credit, could be retirement, could be life insurance, it can be medical insurance. I mean, there's a lot of different things. So when you're just kind of talking to them about their daily life and their business, you're just talking to them, asking questions. They're going to give you the pieces already of the things that's on their minds, what's weighing down their heart. They're going to talk to you about.
I'm going to stop you on this one point because you brought up a great point. Most business owners, especially small business owners, need to take out at some point in time a business loan, which means that they have to show income statements. They have to show inventory, customer invoices. They have to show proof that they're worthy of a $25,000 loan, for instance, for cash flow. And then they have to pay back the interest rate. They're going to jump through the hoops at the bank. How do you show a small business owner the difference between having to go through all those hoops and what an IUL might be able to do for them in terms of relieving that stress?
So a lot of business owners, because they're cash flow heavy, they keep liquidity in their bank account. They have to. It's another one of those things that the banks are going to have you look at. However, if we start putting that money to use in the case of an IUL, once I bring up the illustration, we're talking about retirement, we're talking about, the life insurance pieces or whatever, but the hidden benefit of that is just being able to take policy loans against the actual cash value. it's gonna usually my transition is, hey, when you go to the bank, you're gonna need a new truck for landscaping. Let's just stick with the trend, right? So how would you want to go to the bank and have to pay 4 to 6% interest, be told no, have to provide your tax returns, have your credit run, all this stuff? Or if you had that money already stuck aside and something where you could choose to pay it back, what would you do? Would you give yourself that loan? Yeah, sure, I would. All right, well, let me show you how we can actually take some of this liquid assets and start building you a way that you can actually lend to yourself.
Love it. And what is typically the response that you get back from? I mean, it has to be. I worked many years ago. I worked with small business owners, literally go to shopping center to shopping center, business to business to business. And it was one of the pressing things. It must be such an eye opener when you explain it to them like that in very simple terms that they go, wait a second. There's a way that I can get cash flow. I can take out a loan, and I don't have to pay any interest, and I don't have to pay any taxes. And I mean, it's got just that alone has to get them to go, tell me more.
Oh, yeah, it does. I mean, a lot of times it'll be, that's too good to be true.
Right.
And I've only hit them with half of the IUL at that point. So there's like extra stuff behind it that I haven't even talked about, the death benefit or living benefits at all. I'm just strictly talking about the cash accumulation part. So it is a little bit of work to kind of get somebody to wrap their mind around that, hey, this is exactly what I'm already doing. The only difference is when I put my money in X bank, I get nothing. And if I take it out, well, it's so much harder to save than it is to pay an obligation. Everybody knows that. It's just a human thing. So if you have something that's, building on its own, well, now we can show you how you can take that loan against it for yourself.
Where would you quantify yourself in the process at this point? If you're at step one, step two, where would you go from that point?
So if I've already done a lot of the discovering and asking the questions and things like that, and we're actually to this point, I'm probably about 3/4 of the way through my conversation with them. I would go through the last couple of things, which just make their minds just explode. The living benefits and the death benefit part, it already solves a problem. It's like if a small business owner had retirement, lending, medical insurance, and passing on wealth to their beneficiaries all on their mind as a problem, and I can solve it with one thing. Well, there's not a question of yes or no. It's just how fast can we get it done? Yeah.
Yeah. At that point, they're just like, how much does it cost? That's always the big one, right? How much does it cost? I'll step in for 1 second, and I say to them at that point, I'll usually say, well, how much are you currently contributing to your retirement right now? Well, nothing. I don't have anything, or I have a self-funded for, and that's how I get them to present that, because it's up to them, and then we give them those options. That's just how I do it. How do you do it?
It's along those same lines. You'll have them spending money on other stuff, just like you said, they might have some other, hey, I'm putting back $200. I'm hiding $100 in the mattress. I'm doing X, Y, and Z of all this stuff that just doesn't accumulate to anything. And you just basically say, well, hey, I'm going to solve all these issues for you with one thing. Let's just take some of this money that's being shifted around a little bit and start putting it to use. And again, by this time, you should already have an idea of financially where they are.
Yeah.
How much they're putting back, how much they keep in their accounts, what their expenditures on a month looks like. And so you should be able to kind of like just gauge almost, if they don't have an exact number, then you can run a little bit of a spread for them, see what that looks like for them, how they feel about it. And then once they're comfortable, you just kind of illustrate it and then show them what the accumulation looks like. And it's fantastic.
And just to kind of pop in, this is a question for both of you, just curious, Most like to use it as conversation and do exactly what you're talking about. Do either one of you ever use a needs analysis form to gather that information and take time to write? Whether it's not a good or bad question, it's just, I'm just curious, do either one of you do a needs analysis, or do you just let the flow of the conversation happen?
Yeah, I think Philip and I have been maybe in a different position. I'm sure that's helpful for some, but I think we've been at the bank. Philip did it for 12 years. I did it for 4. So, you start with the form maybe day one, but then it just becomes part of natural conversation. I do think it keeps the flow better if you're not, using a structured form, because your personality comes out. And I think what Philip was describing initially as the first step of his process is just straight rapport, which is so important, just to make that quick connection with people, humanize the interaction, make them more comfortable. People don't really like talking about finances. It can be an uncomfortable situation. So I think the unnerving part of the rapport building is so important, but that's a long answer to a short question. So I don't believe Philip or I use a form, but I think initially, if it helps you, by all means, just try to make it as conversational as possible.
Yeah, I agree. And for maybe somebody brand new out of the gate who maybe doesn't have a banking background or an insurance background, the needs analysis form is a great way to kind of get your feet wet. But like anything else, once you begin to ask those questions 2 or 3 times in a row for different clients, it starts to kind of roll off the tongue.
Absolutely, yeah.
So Philip, I'll let you wrap up here on the last part of your step. So at that point, how do you transition into showing them an illustration, doing an application? What does that process look like for you?
So, I might even have already brought out an illustration, just had one, pre-ran or something like that, just to kind of give them an idea. Cause I'm a very visual person. I'm a numbers guy. So I like to see what, I'm talking about. So I like to, kind of walk through it a little bit with them. And then I'll kind of like maybe customize one later on. But usually it's already done at this point. There's nothing but the app left. So pretty much they'll ask a couple of questions. You definitely want to give them some time to kind of like ask them extra things if they've got anything on their mind. But usually one of those questions is, all right, well, what do we do to get started? Yeah. And then I was like, well, I'm going to collect some information from you. Let me grab your driver's license and we'll ask you some questions. At the end of everything, once everything is, we've apped it, everything like that, I like to set an idea of like the next couple expectations of what's going to happen. I also let them know that I'm going to be there for them no matter what, because I have a lot of other expertise in the small business area. So, I wanted them to be able to reach out to me for any reason. Rapport doesn't stop at the, just with the one meeting. It's going to be this relationship, because the best thing about small businesses, and we're talking about center of influences and stuff like that, they are their own center of influence. They have employees. They know other business owners. So you become their friend, they will introduce you to their friends, their workers, their colleagues, people in their industry, and it just kind of goes out from there. So don't let it be just one and done thing. Carry on, build that relationship.
For sure. And, for the new person looking at this interview here today, you had just said something, and it's true. It's true. There is no real there's a sales process in what we're doing, because everything's a sale. Everything's an enrollment conversation. When you meet somebody for the first time, it's an enrollment conversation. And so the client is basically asking for the product at this point. At this point, they are so fully engaged in what this product will do for them, the problems that it will solve for them, the peace of mind it gives them. It's not a tangible product. This is an intangible product, yet you have another human being getting excited about how they can wrap their arms around it. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, and let me jump in too. So in the commercial bank that I was so accustomed to for so long, they were always like, "Oh, this is a sales job. This is a sales job." Not if you've done your job right. I should never feel like I'm pushing something on somebody. This is not what I'm out to do. If I've uncovered and found the all the problems that a small business might have. Well, all I'm doing is fixing the need. When you go to the doctor's office, you don't walk in and say, the doctor doesn't walk in, well, I see that you're limping, so it's got to be, a pulled hamstring. He doesn't do that. You basically diagnose the problem. I mean, you're just listening, finding out what's going on, and then you have the solution. And that can be of various different things, but ultimately, you're not pushing that on them. You're not saying, hey, you have to have this. It's never a sell. To me, it's just taking the problems and matching the need.
Awesome. And it's probably, and just based on your disposition and how you speak, it's why, individuals are gravitating towards the information that you're providing. So great job. I'm going to switch it over to you, Holly, and kind of put you on this spot here in regards to how are you figuring out while you're in the appointment, and this might happen in the first appointment or the second appointment, whether or not this would be a good candidate for maybe just a straight mortgage protection, which is term life with living benefits. Maybe they're a good candidate for the IUL, or maybe there's a way to uncover, and maybe this would be a good candidate for a fixed indexed annuity. How are you determining that in the, I know that's a loaded one.
Yeah.
But the floor is yours. How are you determining that? How do you know which way to take them?
Philip and I were talking about that. We geek out about this stuff. We talk a few hours a day. We were talking about the best way to answer that question, because to your point, it's just such a loaded one in that there's so many different ways to look at it, right? I think, for me with term life insurance, I tend to stay away from that with business owners as much as possible, just because, especially with the owners, unless they're really tight on cash flow, I'd much rather see them do like a smaller IUL, just because, of all the things that we know, right? I mean, the living benefits is obviously still an opportunity with term life, but with the IUL, the ability for them to borrow against those premiums, cash flow is such a big thing for business owners. 85% of businesses fail because of cash flow. So leading with cash flow and how this IUL helps with that is just such a key component of talking with business owners. And I think why Philip has been so successful, because he looked at an IUL in a very traditional sense, and then he applied his knowledge of small business to it, and he came up with this whole presentation that is it just becomes this no-brainer because of his knowledge of what their pain is. So kind of to gravitate back towards your question, I would say sometimes for the employees, there's situations where term life makes most sense, just because, for example, I was talking to a restaurant owner who has a 28-year-old chef and wanted to get a key man policy on him. And he doesn't really know if this kid's gonna stick around with him for, more than 10 years. So that just made the most sense. But as far as finding, I would say the difference between an IUL and an annuity, one thing I would say to think about when you're talking to business owners is very few of them just for like one day, like, I'm going to start a business and I've never done any work in corporate America, or done a traditional type job. So a lot of these guys have old 401ks, old pension plans, sitting out there, that maybe they've just kind of forgotten about because that was something that was just on autopilot when they were working. Those are great funds to find. I think the thing once you start to learn more about products and the different, things that Equitrust and Athene offer, I think at that point, maybe when you're starting out, it's more of a 2-meeting approach for you, just because in that first meeting, you're really just discovering, probably laying a few seeds before you're just recommending something until you're more comfortable. Philip is already to the acumen where he can do a 1-meeting close, but if you're not sure, it's not an obvious fit either way, I would certainly probably reach out to a Sherpa or someone who has that knowledge, kind of trying to talk to the people on the call that maybe, are thinking about jumping into the world, because there's a lot of variation in what we can do. But the great thing is that between Dwayne Blake and the Sherpas we have on through Freedom Financial, we're always going to find a solution for someone. And that's just the mentality to have in the meetings. Hopefully I answered the question. I know it's a little all over the place, but the best thing.
No, it was great. I want to bring you back to a point that you made about the restaurant and the chef and the key man. And for a new person, why would a business owner want to take out a key man insurance policy on a chef knowing that they might not be around for 10 years? So can you elaborate on that for some of the people that are maybe just watching this?
Yeah, so my specific situation was the chef was actually a part owner of the restaurant. And the reason a lot of business owners make that decision is your chef is very critical in your food cost preservation, right? So the aspect there is if they feel like they own part of the restaurant, right, or they have ownership in it, and their bonus is dependent upon how strict they are with food costs or things of that nature, or making sure that they keep the kitchen in line, that they have a more of an ownership towards the restaurant and just behave in a better fashion that's more healthy for the business. So getting a key man on a chef is just important, because should something happen to that chef, if you have a restaurant that's pumping out consistent volume like the one I went to, if he wasn't able to come to work, they would immediately have to hire someone to replace them. Now, he would obviously be replaceable, but you're not looking at maybe building out like an IUL or a pension plan or something for that person who's so young. And at 28, I don't know what most of you were doing, but I didn't know what the heck I was going to be doing 10 years from now necessarily. So I think it's also just kind of gauging the owner, but he just felt like, listen, albeit an asset I would hate to lose and I want that protection, but I'm not delusional in thinking I'm going to be with this guy forever, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Got it. And so it made sense for the chef and it made sense for the business owner.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Perfect. So a couple key questions I'll ask you guys, and then we'll call it a wrap here for today. What would be, so again, we have a lot of new people that are going to be watching the replay of this interview. Holly, you touched on it in the very beginning, how you go out and you're making yourself known in the small business community. That's one way to do it. And either one of you can feel free to answer this question. What would be one or two other ways, and even if it's just old school, walking in, introducing yourself, leaving a business card, and you got a 30-second elevator pitch, you got that 30-second window to talk to the business owner, what does that look like? What does that look like for you guys scheduling out your day? Because the hardest part of what we do is getting in front of the decision maker and being in front of the people. The easy part is everything that we just talked about here today. So let's talk about the hard part. What would be one or two ways or one or two things or an elevator pitch that you give in order to schedule the appointment?
Philip, why don't you answer that one first? I want to hear what you have to say.
So I do a lot of cold calling. There's no way to reach a mass load of people faster than just picking up the phone and dialing. Usually, there's plenty of business information out there. Facebook, just Googling, taking pictures of like the utility trucks and stuff like that are out and about in the city, just researching the business, finding the business name, finding the business owner, those kind of things. And then just reaching out. And I'll tell you to be pretty honest, my pitch is just, hey, I'm a local business consultant in the area. How are you today? Sometimes I'll pause, sometimes I won't, just depending on how I already feel about the conversation. But, pretty much what I specialize in is business retirement, tax savings, and insurance. And just wanted to see if there was some time this week that you have some time to sit down and maybe we could talk about a few things. Sometimes I'll say, I'll tweak that a little bit, hey, let me, sit down, let me teach you a couple of things. I've been in the industry for 12 years. There's a lot of stuff that I feel that I can show you. And usually, you'll know right away. They're going to say yes, or they're going to say, call me back, or they're going to say, oh yeah, do you work Saturday? And I'll be like, for you, sure. I'll put some time on Saturday for you. And then we schedule the appointment. And for every appointment you set, you just have to have the idea that you're going to have some reschedules. You're going to have, you're going to have some people move it around. You're going to have people cancel. There are going to be people that are not going to show up. So you just kind of over forecast your week to where that, you're going to have 3 to 5 good conversations that week. That's pretty much really all you need. So when you're calling, don't get discouraged by the people that are going to say, nope, I'm good. Or, because if that person's closed-minded, you can't help them. That's not for you to decide. You're there to help them. If they want to listen, we'll improve their financial life. If they don't, you kind of move on to the next person. You make that next phone call. Somebody already knows that they have these issues, and it can be any of the issues that we talked about earlier in the interview. They know retirement. I can almost promise you that 80% of the people you're going to talk to on the phone, they are underfunded for retirement.
Sure.
They're probably struggling to make ends meet, try to keep their business doors open. I mean, just a ton of stuff. You talk about restaurants, they're always fighting for capital. They don't have the money. Well, if that person has those things and they're willing to listen, and it's not costing them anything, just sit down. Those are the people you're going to get. Those you may have to make 10 calls, but you'll get 3 people to listen to you.
Yeah.
All right. That's the 3 people that I want to go see.
Yep. Love it. And I'm sure you would agree with this one statement, and Holly, you too. All these business owners that we're talking about, they're our neighbors, they're our brothers, they're our friends, they're our dads, they're our grandfathers. They're the normal, average, everyday people who just made a decision like we did in some shape or form to become an entrepreneur. They made a decision at some point in time to become an entrepreneur, to become a small business owner. And they got so engulfed in working in their business that they forgot about the one important aspect, which is working on their business and working our way out of their business at some point in time, and what would happen while they're in their business, right? So before I go into, I'm going to give you guys my 30-second, but first I want to hear from Holly. What would be kind of like your intro to get in front of some new business owners, to get in front of new people all day?
Yeah, it was, I remember when I joined Freedom back in September, and I started trying to do this cold turkey calling businesses. And one thing that really helped me, Brett, was something you always say, which is, if you're uncomfortable, you're doing the right thing. You really got to get outside of your comfort zone. And like Philip said, you're going to call people that are, small business owners get a lot of calls. They really do. But I think what distinguishes Philip and what he taught me is the confidence you have when you talk to the business owner, which is surprising to them initially, right? Listen, I've been in this industry for 12 years. I have value I can add to what you're trying to do. And if you come across that way when you're calling on customers, it really does translate if it's in your heart, as cheesy as that sounds, but it's really true. And, I think the other thing Philip and I learned when we initially started calling is you don't want to put yourself in just one bucket. You want to present yourself as a specialist, an overall specialist, which we are. We are with that IUL. We are specialists around protecting against medical, protecting against investment downturn, protecting against cash flow issues, just all in that one product. And we know the statistics for business owners. We know how prevalent of a concern that is for them. And we're one of the few people calling with that solution that's just in one bucket, So I think it's also just present yourself as, I'm here to help you. I know what you're going through. I understand. I get it. And let's talk. This will not be a waste of your time, because I have the acumen, I have the answers to things that I know that you're going through. So it's actually, when I watered it down and I got back to the elemental core of what I really am passionate about and what got me to join Freedom is when I started doing better and when things started working well for me.
Love it. Love it. Great way, great delivery. And you had said, again, something that was key. It's your posture, it's your confidence,
yep,
and your energy. You don't want to be too giddy, but you also don't want to be too down, right? You want to be right there, right in the middle. So you want to be able to deliver it. And like anything else, right? You may be bad before you're good, but that all comes in practice.
Amen.
Mike Schless talks about it all the time, about when people ask him what he does. And I think you had also spoken about this, and so did you, Phil. You had spoken about this early on in the conversation. When people ask you what you do, instead of just answering them, well, you know, I work in financial services and we do life insurance and there's all kinds of products out there that'll be able to protect your home and protect your business, right? Right? And like you've just like verbally vomited all over this individual. And they're like, great. So you're kind of like my uncle, you know, my uncle does that, you know, or my spouse's brother, you know, he's in insurance, you know, great. It's instead of doing that, it's asking the questions. And you had said that when you go in and you're talking to a business owner, they ask you what you do, and you say, well, let me ask you a question first. Same thing. A small business owner says, well, what are you here for? You know, I get calls all day. You're the fifth person to walk through my door today. There's got to be, and for new people watching that, there's got to be a response to that. And so tell me if you like this, and maybe it's something that you guys use something similar. You know, what I do is I work with small to mid-sized business owners, and my emphasis is in risk. Being able to minimize the risk in your business in all aspects as well as in your home. And right. And so when you say something like that, all of a sudden they go, huh, what does he mean by that? What does she mean by that? What is that? What kind of risk? I got all kinds of risk. I'm risking my time right now just talking to you, right? This is what they're thinking. And then they're gonna ask you a question when you say that. Well, what does that mean? What type of risk? And instead of, again, verbally vomiting, you ask another question. Let me ask you, is your business cash flowing? Or have you taken out a loan in the last 5 years that you're currently repaying back? Are you completely 100% in the positive? Yeah, you know, I took out a loan. Okay, well, wouldn't it have been nice, instead of having to jump through all those hoops at the bank and now pay back that interest loan, to be able to operate like your own bank, reach into your own account, take out that $25,000 loan, don't feel pressure that you have to repay it back, and be able to still continue to have that cash flow without that stress? Wouldn't that have made life a little bit easier for you? Well, heck yeah, now you got my attention. How do you do that? Most people haven't paid off their home. They just haven't. Most people still have taken out a second mortgage, or the refi, or whatever that might look like. So here's another way to ask that. Have you paid off your home yet? My home? Yeah, so outside of your business, where you and your family live, have you paid off your home? No, I haven't. Well, if something was to happen to you, unexpected, maybe a critical illness or an injury, and you couldn't be here at the business for the next 2 years, and the income stops, and you had to file for bankruptcy, what happens to your home life? What happens to that house that you and your family live in? And they go, I never really thought about that. And so all of a sudden now you have their attention, and you didn't have to verbally puke, and you didn't have to do all that. All you did was just ask a couple qualifying questions. Now you have their attention. Now, and I'm going to leave you guys with this. I'm going to ask you both a quick, what would you have done at that point? Would you then have segued into trying to get a sit at that point? Or at that point, would you have created the urgency that we need to get together and have a conversation and continue this conversation, but I'm on my way to my next appointment. I just wanted to pop in and say hello. How would you guys do that?
Philip, what's your thought on that?
So I'm kind of a laid back kind of person. I think in any kind of art of negotiation, you have to be willing to walk away. You know, if they don't want it, then, you know, hey, that's the way I am. I'm like, hey, you know, this is what I do. You've already discovered that this is an issue. Sometimes I've had people say, can you come to my office? Let's talk a little bit more about this. So yeah, I'll go ahead and do that. Sometimes it's, oh, well, hey, this is really a great conversation, but I don't have time right now. What's your schedule look like? You know, that's them saying that to me. And then I'll book the appointment. And then, you know, sometimes it's, you know, hey, well, let's keep in touch or something like that. Let's follow back up. There's really no wrong answer. I mean, like, granted, you know, you want to get in front of them, you want to finish that conversation. But I think if you're in the mindset that the only way that you win is by apping something, then you're kind of hurting yourself. You're there in the capacity to learn about them. If you're putting pressure on yourself and putting pressure on them, that you've got to get that computer open and you've got to get that app, I think ultimately you're undoing what you're actually setting out to do. So I'm pretty laid back. So I know there's a lot of other people that will try to get that sit right then and there. But I find that, you know, by just being more accommodating and being there, that they push me to right then and there. I don't. So like I said, I'm just in the mindset that, hey, you know, this is a great conversation. I definitely want to help you. I'll make any time available for them that they want to, but I'm not going to like try to hound them right then and there. If they want to, great. If they don't, fine. You know, I just find that when I don't do that, it happens anyway.
Great answer. And every situation will be different.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah.
So you just have to be quick on your feet.
It's learning the industry. I mean, like, and fill in the conversation. And you learn that when you start working with people. You'll tell if this is something that they'll drop everything right then and there. Or maybe you're at the restaurant and they can't. There's two people working the restaurant. They can't, but they really want to follow up. Don't be upset with like taking the appointment or taking a business card or getting their best contact call or setting the appointment at a later date. That's okay. If it's truly something that you did your job and they understand that, hey, this is something they have to talk about, then you don't have to force the issue. It's going to happen.
Yep. Bam, fam. Book a meeting from a meeting. Holly?
Yeah, I think to Philip's point, you'll find out very quickly how well you did with your 30-second elevator speech, right? Because I tease that you know, what you want to do before you even talk product is get them to run through a brick wall for solving the needs that they know they need solved to. And your confidence that you have a solution for that is what's going to bring it home. And I think, you know, to Philip's point, it's, you know, at the end of the day, you know, when you're at your place of business, that's work. And I don't know about you, but when I used to work in corporate America and someone came into my office and just assumed that I had a moment to talk about something, it drove me nuts. Because I was like, I am literally in the middle of something extremely important. So you can catch people at bad moments too. I mean, it's, you know, you could call someone on a Monday and they just hang up on you and say, never call me again. And on a Friday, they're your best friend. So, you know, what you have to understand with business owners is they're always in a high stress situation, you know, and so that you might catch them off guard. But ultimately, I think the casual approach is a little bit better just because I think they get a lot of cheesy sales calls, a lot of cheesy salesmen come through the door. And if you can distinguish yourself as just a confident advocate and a confident, you know, solution finder for them, that comes off a lot more genuine and just going to create better outcomes for you.
Agreed, 100%. Well, guys, we are coming up on the 1 hour mark, and I don't want to take up any more time, but this interview today I thought was very informational. It was almost a great training tutorial for anybody brand new coming on board that is looking into an IUL product and wants to go business to business and talk to business owners. You both did a fantastic job. I thank you. Thank you for taking your time out of your morning to to be with me here this morning and answer questions. And I look forward to seeing you both June 15th in Charlotte.
Absolutely. Thanks, Brett.
You got it. Take care, guys. Have a nice week. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.